People often think that peace is really easy, and peace isn't easy.
In warfighting, you're trying to take a situation and create an artificial situation to what it currently stands, so ultimately an objective can be achieved. In the case of peacekeeping, you're trying to stabilise a situation so that it can form the basis for a return to normal existence.
Restoring peace isn't just sort of being on one side and showing force, it's actually lowering the threat level and the escalations of issues regardless of what the threat cause is.
Peacekeeping is where you go into to enforce the peace that has already been established. Peace monitoring, we were there to monitor how both sides were going in the peace process and to help them move towards a resolution of the conflict. The idea was to keep the sides talking, keep them negotiating the little things, the differences they had.
You are trying to find a way through the tensions in a particular area to restore some sense of peace to the region.
Our mission was actually classified as what they call peace enforcing. So we went into an area where there wasn't peace at the time, and we had to go there and basically instill peace.
When you're young and bulletproof, you lack life experience.
And at the time I was 19 years old when I deployed over there. I was pretty, sheltered, living in Bendigo at the time, coming from a good family, the orderly society that we live here.
I grew up very quickly when I first started to go on peacekeeping operations. I'd only just become qualified in the skill that I was sent over there to do. I had 4 days' notice to pack up my life, and then I was on a plane and landing in a foreign country that I knew very little about.
Everybody carried a weapon.
The fact that, well, hang on, now we're walking down the street, we've got live ammunition, there's people here and there's the potential of something happening at any time.
It wasn't uncommon to have weapons pointed at you.
Everybody there, from the smallest of children to the oldest of people, carried a grass knife, which we would call a machete. You couldn't say, okay, everybody put down your grass knives.
There were a couple of situations where you sort of, the hair stood on the back of your neck sort of thing, and you're a bit, what's going on here?
You become used to it pretty quickly, and as I say, always smile broadly at the man with the nice AK-47. You never set out to upset them.
So you couldn't react because of the orders opening fire were that you could not fire at them until they fired at you, basically.
It just kind of became a way of life, really. It was just part of the environment.
If there is violence and the countries and the areas are run by violence, there can be no peace.
To go into these environments and see the way people struggle in the world, the moral dilemmas that they are faced with on a daily basis that are life-challenging in a lot of circumstances.
As a military person, I've seen the best and worst of humanity. I've seen the extreme scales in one day.
There was one lady in particular, she had twins, and the soldiers over there just said, well, we're going to shoot one, pick one. Which one do you want to live? So she had to pick one, but she didn't, but they shot one anyway. So it's, what do you say to a woman who's, she'd relive that every day.
How can you bring peace to an area like that? Yeah, I don't know what the answer is.
The answer is with great difficulty. And if we can help do something along those lines through our Australians, why not?
Like any big machine, it's only as good as each individual component working together. If any one part of it isn't there or isn't doing what it needs to do, the whole machine fails.
For me, being a combat engineer, it's helping people. So we put a suspension bridge across this river so the locals, to go to the bus stop and to go to school, they don't have to cross a creek, and they're losing 5 or 6 people a year. And as a peacekeeper, that's what we did. Whether it's getting rid of battlefield clearance, you're getting rid of landmines, unexploded ordnance, or you're destroying weapons or explosives that have been found, you rendering areas safe, you provide access, whether you're clearing roads or building airfields. For us, we built refugee camps that would eventually have 100,000 people transit through them.
Making sure they had access to like safe drinking water, sanitation, repairing buildings and so forth.
Another problem we had there too was that there was a little bit of village envy as well. So we had a number of schools burnt to the ground because another village didn't have one and we hadn't built one there yet. So yeah, it was different.
Our role was to train Afghan refugees in basic mine clearance so that they could return to their villages, etc.
My job, as I went over there as a driver, the infantry were there and they were the main presence on the ground, but they're not going to get anywhere without transport.
I was a field intelligence officer. It was my job to provide force protection to our forces by being the commander's eyes and ears on the ground. I think the difficulty with peacekeeping comes in that it's difficult to identify who the enemy is, who the bad people are sometimes. Everyone looks the same, and it's only if they suddenly pull out a weapon or they take an action that all of a sudden that perception changes. And we have very tight and restricted rules on what you can and can't do in those situations. War's a little bit different. It's not easier, but you see the enemy, you shoot the enemy. On peacekeeping operations, you can't do that.
Ultimately, the peacekeeping mission to me, it's a massive sliding scale of it can ramp up in a matter of seconds to coming up to a combat-like environment and an extremely dangerous environment.
The biggest challenge was understanding the problems that the people had and the terrible time that they'd had for 10 years.
You were building trust, you were learning what was actually going on. Things were changing daily and they were changing quickly.
There was still a lot of distrust. It was such that we had to paint our helicopters a different colour to what they would normally be, because to people in Bougainville, seeing a green helicopter coming along generally meant that there was going to be someone firing at them out of that machine gun.
You go into a shop to buy an item, you come out, and all of a sudden there's a person getting stoned to death. 200-300 people out there, all joining in. You're there with somebody else, you can't do a thing. You just got to sit there and watch it. We were not allowed to get involved. And you wouldn't get involved because you're interfering with their local customs, traditions. If you were to stop it, that means that you are against them. So everything you've built up, all the trust and everything else you've done, all the goodwill that everybody's done is out the door. And once it's gone, it's gone.
One of the challenges we had was lack of contact with Australia. We had no radio, we had no phone, no form of communication, everything was word of mouth basically.
There were times whilst I was there that we had some of our team members held up by members of either particular faction. They had to negotiate their way out of the threat situation. There was never that fallback option to fight your way out because we weren't there to do that. We were there just to keep an eye on the place.
But at the same time, we have the other end where I was at a waterfall playing with a bunch of 6-year-olds that are doing backflips. They're loving life, we're loving life, and we're getting that community engagement. So it's just about being prepared for the extremes whilst on peacekeeping missions, but being able to adapt yourself at any given moment to the situation that you need.
Peacekeeping missions are the most important and most challenging operations that Australian Defence Force personnel deploy in, without a doubt. And had we not participated, there is no way that our region would be as secure as what it is now. Our combined efforts with other countries have brought stability to those regions.
I look at what we did And even some of the smaller jobs we did is what they call generation changing. We changed a generation.
Every kid who's now still got 2 legs, because the teams we were working with cleared them out, and it makes it all worthwhile.
We were really there helping them achieve what they wanted to achieve with their country. The country may not have ever been able to have their own government. Every year on Anzac Day, I know that they have little ceremonies over there, and they still actively acknowledge the role that Australia and other militaries had in what they have today.
Just knowing how lucky we are to live in the country we are, things that we take for granted, not having rife corruption within our political system, within our voting, that's not always been the case, and that's not the case for many countries in the world.
I don't know, I felt really good in myself that I'd done some good. I'd helped these people.
And I don't think I'd be the only person that's been to the Solomon Islands that has that strong connection with that country now. Whenever it's in the news or there's an earthquake or there's something nearby, you know, it's kind of corny, but I guess it's taken a piece of my heart with it. You know, that time, that experience, those people, that culture.
Like, you go there to do your job, and if you achieve your job, it's great. But you're still in a war zone or in an area where there's instability, where people have been hurt. I never felt that sense of satisfaction from achieving a mission. The pain of what they've experienced, the moral dilemmas that they have to face to live, is something that I'll never forget.
It really opens your mind to, everyone says, you know, it's a caring, sharing, loving world. Well, trust me, even my experience in peacekeeping, it's not such a caring, sharing, loving world. And it's a fine line between peacekeeping, peace enforcement or war, because of all my 4 conflicts I've been involved in, there was never actual declaration of war. Do you call that peacekeeping or do you call that peace enforcement? You know, it's a play on words, if you want to put it that way.
A veteran is a slice of society.
Army is made up of people from all different walks of life, especially the reserve world.
You can't really put it into a tight little bundle and say, that's a veteran. They could be anyone that we come across who decided that either I want to go and serve my country, or I've been told by a little ball dropping into a ballot that I'm going to serve my country. It's a microcosm of Australian society, the ADF. It's just a slice with the uniform on top.
If we make, you know, one person feel safer because we walk past them in a uniform, then is that not worth it?
The Australian way is to go in and be as helpful as you can, where you can. If you can't, then people fear Australians for a good reason. Conflict is something we can't avoid, no matter how hard we try. But if we can make that conflict a little easier and a little better for people, then we as Australia need to be doing that.